Hello everybody and welcome back to Philadelphia, where today it is all about trains, and more trains. Yes, we're going to be adding in a cargo rail terminal over in this little space over here. We're also going to be shifting this old rail yard because I know a lot of you complained about these dodgy connections and the unrealistic amount of bridges coming out of it. And yeah, okay, maybe it wasn't the most decent place for it originally, so it's going to shift over here alongside our cargo rail terminal, and we're going to create a whole massive rail terminus surrounded by some more industry. Obviously do something with our old recycling centre that was just dumped here several episodes ago and integrate that into our big industrial build. And ultimately we're going to completely transform this little section of coastline. So before we start, just a little quick recce on where we're currently at. So we're earning about 30,000 an hour in terms of money. Our population's actually dropping at the moment, which is slightly concerning, but it's not too bad. And just in terms of jobs as well, we're actually down to 15.5%, so the impact of adding in switch on and our farmyards and bit of industry last time has slowly been chipping away at that number, so it's not too bad overall at the moment. But we're going to add in a few more jobs. We've got high demand for offices, industry, that sort of thing. So we're going to satiate that and then also try, we're up to 31,000. We're also going to try not to hammer our budget too badly by adding in all of this rail infrastructure. And the reason why I think now is the time for a cargo rail terminal is because we're actually doing pretty well on industries. So we are yet to put in oil, we're yet to put in ores, apart from stone, and we're yet to use coal as well. So there's still some industries to go, but this area of Philadelphia has a lot going on in terms of farming, stone, and forestry as well, of course. So I definitely think having something in this part of the map, in this part of the region, is going to be really important for getting those goods around the map later on. So we will be adding in these other industries, but in different areas. So we want to be able to help the industries from over here transport to the various areas of the map. And of course, our forestry is right here. So by putting the cargo rail yard over here, there's a really quick, easy route just across the river straight into the cargo rail yard. So not far for them to go to transport those goods in and out of the city and around the city. And same goes with our farmland really as well. So they're connected into the highway interchange here. They can just scoot along the highway off here and straight into the cargo rail terminal. Or alternatively, they could start diverting heavy trucks FewK, which wouldn't be ideal. But there's multiple options and it's not too far away from where that main industry is located, and that's the most important thing that I'm focusing on here. So first things first, I want to get the terminals in so that we can design the rail tracks around that, and then we can start placing in more warehouses and industry and the extra kind of assets that we want to flesh out this whole area around that. Now, I have actually gone ahead and downloaded Tygon's Rail Infrastructure Pack from PDX Mods. There is a link in the description below if you haven't got this, but this is awesome. It gives us so many more options in terms of train depots, for one. So we've got like this medium square one. We've got some longer, much nicer looking ones. We've got through depots as well as ones that are kind of constrained at one end. And in addition to that, we also get these kind of cargo terminals, which are for specific industries. So we've got one for farming here. We've got one for lumber, oil, everything, general goods as well. So there's lots of these that can be played with. They're much kind of smaller footprints than the default assets. So a really, really great, inspiring little pack here. So one thing that I definitely don't want to use is this giant rail yard. The thing that I don't like about it is I find the rail connections really unnatural, the way they're positioned. Like the tracks should be closer together. They shouldn't all just be converging like that in such a small space. It's also just such a huge footprint, and it's also overkill for our city. So it provides 10 vehicles. We are actually, if we take a look at our transport tab, only using 3 trains at the moment. So we don't need that size of rail yard in this area of the city. So Tygon's assets also reduce the upkeep. So you can see here 15,000 a month. These are 10,000 a month for these smaller ones, or even less for the medium train depot here, for example. So I think it's worthwhile using one of these depots. However, for cargo, because we're kind of looking at general cargo here and nothing too specific, I am actually just going to use the default vanilla cargo terminal because I don't mind this asset too much. I quite like all the props that come on it. I think we can kind of integrate those quite nicely. We're going to remove a lot of the trees and the random stones around it, and of course add our own decals, but I think this one's going to sit in really nicely. So for the cargo trains, I may actually use this road as a guideline, although it is going to be removed so that we can add in more assets. But I'm thinking I'm actually going to place this round about here and facing off in this direction, importantly as well, because the main cargo transport that we're going to want is down and out into the main bulk of the city, which is going to sit over here. So having it feed off in this direction I think is going to be much more beneficial in the long run for getting goods around our city. So more thinking about internal movement of goods as opposed to actual exporting. However, of course, we do have an external connection right here, so exporting will be more than possible. And I'm going to pause the game for the moment, and I am going to remove this highway road, which is here, because it's blocking really where I want to put the main train depot and all the kind of intricate tracks that we're going to do around it. So this land is a little bit bumpy in places, so I am just going to do a tiny bit of smoothing off. It's not going to kind of reshape the landscape in any great way, but it's just going to allow us to make this look a little bit smoother and a little bit more realistic when it comes down to it. So with the train depot, we're going to go for the medium train depot long 5/6 track through, and the reason why I want through is to make sure that trains can come in from either direction to be maintained, so it's just going to make it a little bit easier on our train infrastructure ultimately. So I'm going to place this in at a slight angle, just so we get a little bit more interest in this, because as well, the train track's going to be flowing in this way. And then we want it to curve off somehow around this hillside to join up back with this track over here. And then the track from the cargo rail station can come alongside. We're going to move the recycling centre a little bit. It's going to come alongside this road, under the bridge, round the edge, and join up nice and easily with this track over here. So let's go ahead and get this all connected up. So there we have our big train yard in, and I did decide the most sensible place to cross the river down this side was at this narrowest point, which is quite close to FewCandy. Now, I know that's probably not the most ideal location, but at least it's not sort of opposite the village, so we can still do some nice countryside detailing at some point along this side. But that then flows off here into the main train yard and then round this way. Now, obviously, we've got some horrendous jank here, which we'll sort out a little bit later, but it does then join up into the main train line, which is then going to flow on round into the downtown to various more cargo stops, various more train stations, all that kind of jazz. Now, I was conscious that trains actually from our stations that we already have in Fewhaven, Gaudy Bay and Atkinson can't actually get into here. So what I have done is a little train turning around point here. So this is a double-way track that they can come in and turn around and then go back out onto this bridge. So the trains can still get out. And both of the tracks are connected up to this direction, so that should facilitate them fine. And then, of course, actually most of the train stations and most of the train infrastructure is going to come from this side of the city. So there's no problem getting into either the cargo or the train yard from that direction. Now, before I forget, I am going to go ahead and unlock a cargo rail route. So we're going to do that from here to the outside connection of, I think it's Oregon, yes, over this side. So we can share goods with Oregon, hopefully export some. Hopefully that'll bring in a bit more money into the city as well. We'll see how that goes, but we do now have that line in. So this will be operational once I click play. But before we do that, I do want to remove our old train yard over here. So let's go ahead and click delete. Are we sure? Are we sure? It did take me a long time to detail that area. But yes, we're sure, because it wasn't ideal. And I think this is probably the first time in my YouTube history where I've actually redeveloped an area, so I'm feeling a little bit nervous. But we definitely want to keep that line connected. We also want to keep this line connected so that the respective train lines that we do have in, the passenger ones, can get to their desired locations. But we can now go ahead and trim back off all of these awful connections, which I know a lot of you critiqued. The train police were on me when I did this, so no more. They're gone. It's all good now. We can all relax. Hopefully. So yeah, there we go. Now this is... something's wrong here. Yeah, it seems like we have random extra nodes or something to that description in this place. I'm not sure what that is about. That's super weird. Can I try and grab them with move it? No, we can't. Okay. So we're just going to have to try our best to bypass those little random spots there. So rather than snapping into that point, I'm going to go a little bit further. And then we'll curve round to meet up with this train track there. It may need a little bit of smoothing, but that does now look functional. We've got the same issue down this end as well. Very interesting indeed. Now, also we've got a lot of sorting out to do in this area, but I did think maybe we'll leave the semblance of an old abandoned rail line here, just for kind of symbolic sake, I suppose you could say. So within the ploppable vanilla assets, we can actually get the old rail yard building in here. So I think we are going to go ahead and plop this in. And I'm going to come back to detailing this up a bit later, but we're basically going to make it completely overgrown, unconnected and all that kind of jazz, and maybe put in some old fake rail lines that are kind of showing the connections into the building but aren't really functional. So we'll come back to that. But I think that'll be a nice touch to symbolise what we used to have in Few Haven in this area. So we should be able to click play now and see things hopefully operational. Are we getting power? We are. Wonderful stuff. So vehicles in use, 1 of 6, so they are now coming out of this depot. Oh, here we go. Here we go. So I could change the train types here as well to have our smaller trains, but I think for the moment I'm just going to leave them as this because all of the trains running are technically intercity connections. So I think having the larger train rather than these kind of more... oh, they're so good. They're so good. They always look like subway trains. I absolutely love them. The local looking trains. Oh, it's disappeared. Oh no. We'll have those a little bit further along in the city. We've now got cargo rail lines coming out as well. So let's just take a little look. If we go to cargo here, let's just check how many trains there are. So we know we had 3 previously on our passenger lines. We have got 2 on this one. So we're still 5. So we're still within the capacity of this depot, which is good news. And all 5 are now in use. Wonderful stuff. There we go. If we take a little look at budget, it's actually increased rather than decreased, and the hourly costs on these are a fair amount. So actually 82 per month and 41 per month, which is a fair bit less, I think, than the other train depots. So that may be saving us a little bit of money there, but that looks pretty good to me. Are we having any warnings or issues with trains? We're not. The trains are managing to turn around, I'm guessing smoothly. Yes, look, they're using our little turning around spot to get back into the city. Probably blocking the lines, may cause train issues further down the line. But the train traffic isn't as severe as it was in Cities 1, so I've not really had any problems with trains up to this point. Obviously, as the city grows, maybe that will become an issue, but those train lines are also going to change and develop, so they shouldn't be needing to turn around here really in the long run. We do have a power issue over in UK, which I'm glad I noticed. So I think that's because I've changed up this type of road here. Yes, it is exactly that. So let's make sure we select our road builder road, which has power and sewage underneath it. And let's upgrade this section. And then we shouldn't have any more problems. Let's just check. Magic. There we go. So in terms of what we're actually going to put around our train yard, I was having a look at this one in Vancouver, which I thought was particularly inspiring. So we've got these prongs of rail coming out here into this yard, which I'm going to try and imitate. We've also got these trailer truck beds sitting up next to it. Got lots of rusty kind of trailer, odd container ends around there, a little bit of machinery. We've got these huts and things along the edge. We've also got this ramp as well, quite inspiring. We could do something with that for sure. And then this all kind of comes out with this green border onto this concrete road with all of this industry. And this is my favourite part, actually. These buildings here with all of this graffiti on the back of it. I love this warehouse style buildings all the way along the train track here. We can definitely imitate that. We've also got things like this huge car yard. We've got like a smarter car park here. And then this actually filters across into this office building over this side. So a complete mix of different types of things. And we've got this dirty yard right next to it. All very, very inspiring indeed. And the other thing that jumped out to me as well is on the tracks. We've got several tracks that are clear here. And then the rest of them is where the trains are stacked up. So I'd definitely like to imitate a lot of that, but there's a ton of things here we can take inspiration from, including this little sort of green island. I can imagine using the dirty road net lanes for something like this, try and blend it in nice and naturally. So a ton of inspiration we can take. Now, obviously, we are in a completely different setting to what we're seeing here right next to Vancouver downtown. So we're going to need to bear that in mind as we're blending out into the environment around it. But we're going to do our best to transfer a lot of what we've just seen here on Google Earth into City Skylines. So the first thing I do want to do is move this recycling centre so that it integrates nicely into our cargo rail yard. So let's go ahead and relocate. I think we're actually going to place it slightly overlapping. I'm hoping this doesn't interfere with the building, so we'll see in just a second. But we're going to place it up against the rail yard like this. We do seem to have lost some of that parking and that decals in the back there, so let's just actually shift it over a tiny bit so we're not overlapping there. Yes, and now we get that all nicely in. And now we can redo this road to suit as well here. So I think instead of the big kind of normal regular road that we had in previously, we're actually going to use an alleyway road for this. We'll keep it in a similar place and we'll have a level crossing there because it's not like this road is really going to be a huge main infrastructural type road. So I think that's going to suit what we'll need here. And then because we've got this kind of extra decals at the back of the cargo rail terminal, we're going to just line it with a road here, and this road can then go on in this direction. Now with the cargo train station, we do have this extra storage add-on and extra tracks. Now I'm actually not going to utilise them at this point. We're going to have more cargo stations around the city, one's closer to the downtown, which is going to facilitate more cargo. So I don't think we need this right now, so we don't have to worry about that extra track potentially running through the recycling centre, for example. But I do really like the storage building on it. So if we actually come in to find it, we can find the prop version of the cargo train terminal warehouse, which I think would be a nice addition to have in here. And I actually think in particular, having some of these up against the train line would definitely be a type of vibe that I would like to see in here. Let's turn off snapping to roads, and I'm thinking we could probably have it somewhere over this side. So we could have it so that trucks are delivering into this part of it, and then it opens back out onto the train line the other side. And we can create some really nice detailing around this to blend it in a little bit better and extend out this train yard. So let's plop that in here. And as mentioned, I am going to get rid of all of these trees, these rocks, these bushes that are on the cargo train station because they just don't work for me, including all these tiny, tiny little rocks here. And that gives us a little bit more space to play with. So this space is going to be the kind of open yard that I mentioned where we're going to have the semi-trailers up against it. So in here, we can mark that out with a bit of surface for now. And we also want to create an entrance into it. So let's go ahead and just manipulate the surface so that we get that effect here. And then we can have that grass border like we saw on Google Earth there too. So that's going to be that section. I then think here we'll leave that little green border with a few trees and such like. So again, let's go ahead and just mark that area and we'll come back in and detail that off a little bit later on. But this road here does also want connecting up. So let's actually run it up quite close to the train track, up against it, and then it can join into this road like that. And then we can put some industrial buildings in here that we can then cover in graffiti and have fun with that way. And then similarly, this section here as well, I would like to line with kind of large warehouses. We can get those backs of them with loads of graffiti on up against the rail and make it sort of slightly larger complexes. So I don't want to use just kind of a row of industrial buildings like that. I want to mix in some of the static ploppables into here. So very similar to what we've done with the cargo storage yard over there from the rail station. We've got things like the road maintenance depot building. I mean, we could even consider actually adding the actual road maintenance depot in here, but it is quite large, so I think we won't do that. And also, we don't really need the props around it. We also don't really need the functionality right now. So let's turn off snapping to road, and what we can do is add this in, let's say on this corner right here. Now again, when I'm placing these assets, I'm mindful of doorways and things that are already on them. So we do have these two service door entrances at the back here, so it's not just a solid brick wall. So we want to leave a little bit of space so that vehicles could come in and out of there at the back, and then we can have this kind of warehouse entrance there. That's absolutely fine. And if we come in to find it, this manufacturing warehouse, so this is a functional building now. So again, having a mix of kind of plopped static ones that don't do anything and functional ones I think will be quite nice here. So we could definitely have a row of these because I love how these look. We can recolour them to suit what we want as well. So let's actually go ahead and have 5 of these in here, and then we'll just use Move It to drag them as far away from the road as we can go and line them up really nicely here. And I also think functionally as well, having warehouses around the rail yard is actually kind of suitable. So I'm quite happy to do that. And then what we can do is come into our vanilla ploppable buildings and find this same asset, I think. Yeah, this one. We're going to turn off snapping to road, and then we're going to do something a little bit different next to this. So we'll leave a little bit of space for a yard and some extra industrial style detailing. And then we'll make this one really close to the railway because there's no doors or anything like that on this side. Oh, there is a door. There is a door. Is there one on that side? There's not. Okay, let's flip it around. So we're going to line them up next to the railway like this, and this gives us that prime opportunity to do some of that lovely graffiti detailing that we saw in Vancouver. And just by doing this, it gives the effect of larger buildings rather than having lots of kind of sort of slightly messier, smaller complexes like that. So that's really the effect that I want to get here. We also have as well the extra bus garage depot, which I really like. It's kind of this big warehouse looking building. We can definitely have some car parking next to it. Again, we can put that right up next to the railway like that. Could be kind of cool. And in fact, actually, again, noticing that there's an entrance in the side of the building there, it would be kind of cool to have a row of car parking going up to that. And then we'll position this building. We do have a little side door out there as well. We'll position this building like that so that the front is out onto the front, and we can have some facilities or whatnot down the side as well. So I'm going to go in and grab an invisible road, and we're just going to spread it up. Let's turn off snapping for this. Spread it up to the end like that. I actually don't want people to walk onto the railway, so we're going to leave it unconnected. And then what we can do is place in a load of domes car parking up against here. So this can be like a staff car parking area for the big long warehouse, keeping the front obviously where the warehouse doors are open for the truck traffic and that sort of thing. We've also got this tram depot building, which, whilst a sort of slightly different choice, I also think is a really lovely large warehouse that we could definitely utilise somewhere. So potentially even in this area where there's a little bit more breathing room for it. And then we can add the illusion of lots of cargo out the front to extend out the vision of the cargo rail terminal here. So yeah, that's the type of industry that we want to add around. I do also want to address services as well here too. So I'd definitely like to have police and fire. I'm not too worried about medical, but I think police and fire would probably be quite appropriate for this area. So in terms of firehouse, I'm actually eyeing up this Chinese fire and rescue building. I really like this. And also the fact that it's kind of got this sort of manicured car park to it as well. Because if we think back to what we saw on Google Earth, I'd like to have that big office with a fancy car park in this space here. So having some of these service buildings around it with a similar sort of vibe, I think would be quite appropriate. So if we take a look at police as well, the USA Southwest Police Station is really calling to me here. I think this is quite a grand building and will go quite well next to a large office if we put that in this space here. So we'll come back to that office when it comes to the detailing, but that adds services into the area. We talked about the type of vibe that we want for the industry and some of those like decorative yards here as well. You'll actually notice I have also plopped down this modern medical clinic additional clinic centre in here because I just really like the way that looks, and it kind of looks similar to some of those small huts we saw in this big open yard here. So that's definitely going to go in there. Now on the railways as well, we also want to add in prop trains and lots of them, but I'm actually going to do that at the end because one thing we are going to be using on all of our rail services is of course these railway ground cover decals, which I think will just work absolutely beautifully in here. Like we're not going to be able to line them up perfectly to all of the rails because we don't have double tracks, so this one's going to work fine. But some of these others are going to be a little bit more problematic, but we're going to see what we can do with some of these net lanes at least. I've just got these ground covers as well, which we could potentially use all over this area just to sort of muddy it up a tiny bit. And we have even got like these that we could potentially use under the railway tracks on top of surfaces to give a little bit of extra sort of texture to those tracks where we can't fit on the railway decals. So yeah, again, come to that in the detailing. But just before we do that, a very quick word from today's video sponsor, which is Instant Gaming. If you're perhaps looking to pick up the Modern Architecture or Urban Promenades Content Creator Packs, or even the base game of Cities Skylines II, in fact any game of your choice including Farming Simulator, Civilization 7, the whole Sims shebang, Planet Zoo and all of its corresponding DLCs. Please do use my link in the description of this video to go and see what amazing deals can be had on this massive variety of games. And we also have a monthly giveaway, which is again linked in the description below, where you can win a game of your choice. So go and bag yourself a deal, check out the link, and also help to support the channel. Okay, so one final thing to talk about before we come on to an absolutely ginormous detailing time-lapse, let's face it, it's going to be it's going to be a big one, is how we're going to blend it into the environment around. So we've obviously got FewCandy down here, so I want to maintain that sort of countryside vibe as we come up and down this road. Maybe we'll add the odd detached house in here just to dot along this main road here, but we'll keep that very kind of countryside until we come into the industry at this point. I think what we will do is flesh out this industrial yard a little bit this side as well, but in general we're going to have quite a sharp kind of edge onto countryside across this side of the industrial area, very much like this rail yard in Eastleigh in the UK. So this is quite an interesting one, I will say. And one thing to point out, which I'm not going to do today, is this little row of housing here, right in the middle of the rail yard. So yeah, sometimes when you think something is completely unrealistic, actually, there's examples that you can find on Google Earth of random things like that. But there we go. So yeah, we've got this massive train yard here. It sort of extends all the way on down here. As you can see, we come to like a huge kind of train storage area. It's absolutely ginormous, this place. But you can see this other side, we've kind of got these big industrial areas, very similar to the effect that I want to try and gain here. And then we come out onto green, open countryside at the other side of it. So it's very much this border road, separates those industrial areas from beautiful green. I think this might even be some sort of nature reserve or protected land, not 100% sure. So that's the type of border that we're going to be having. Obviously there's a city on this side of it, but for us it's kind of going to be green most of the way around actually. So with that, let's go ahead and jump into a ginormous detailing session. Holy moly, guys, that was that was an epic one. Literally, it has taken me the best part of a week to finish off this build, working several hours a day. It's been a bit crazy, but I've really tried to kind of highly detail every single area of this build and make it feel like it's unique and it's got character and it's functional all over the place as well. So even where we've used a lot of the prop buildings, I've integrated functional buildings in around them. So we're getting, you know, a decent amount of movement around the area. Absolutely loving seeing these trains flowing past as well. And I mean, let's just come down here. The epic graffiti wall, as you can see at this point. Even this took me quite a long time just to add all of these graffiti decals. We get really up close, you can see I've kind of added the tag decals all over the top. So just like huge credit to all of the creators. Like, this build is not possible without these amazing creators, a lot of which I have honoured on this wall right here. I'm just so grateful to all of the mods and asset makers that are out there. You make this game so much more enjoyable, let's face it. But there we go, epic graffiti wall in. So I don't really know where to begin, but I'll give you kind of an overview of what we have here. So we have generic industry down this end, which is all functional, and I've just taken the care to kind of organise a lot of the buildings so it feels like a relatively natural industrial state. All of the buildings are a bit dirty, a bit used, a bit worn. There's a lot of rubbish lying around the place, that sort of thing. And we've got buildings within their own kind of walled off complexes as well. So like this whole area here is a big yard for this industrial building and this space. It's really enjoying how that is. We then have a small section of smarter looking offices over here with a nice little food court in the middle and a little garage for convenience. And then we move on to the logistics part of the build here, where we've got several larger warehouses kind of packed with lorries and that sort of thing. So I've made the most of these assets by adding signs on as well, so they look and feel like functional businesses. We've got our honorary graffiti and rust decals and things like that all up the back here. This one was actually really fun. I spent a lot of time adding all of these crack decals to the area, but also a big thing I kind of wanted to translate throughout this build is this sort of patchy looking concrete. Looking around Google Earth, that was one of the biggest things that stood out to me. Like, things weren't all the same colour. So, you know, we've got different uses of concrete and asphalt and different colours and textures all over this entire build. So hopefully that kind of comes through, and then using a lot of the decals here to bring it to life in terms of road repair areas and that sort of thing. Now you will see as well, like looking at this road here in particular, I have added in the Real Vision decals to the build, which are not available on PDX mods. They are only available on GitHub. And I want to shout out Canadian Moose for helping me find these and install them. So massive credit to him. But they are so insanely good. Like, they're hugely highly detailed, which I suspect is probably the reason why they're not on PDX mods, because they're going to be big files. But they just look absolutely beautiful and just insanely realistic. Like, even just these simple kind of crack things here that I've tried to integrate. Maybe that's a bit of a random place. Probably not the best example to look at, but yeah, really loving those decals in particular. And you can see all the concrete along this road here completely transforms our standard alleyway road. Oh yes, I'm enjoying those trains going past immensely. But yeah, so good. If you are keen to get some more decals in your life and some highly realistic, very Real Vision, in fact, decals, you can look that up on GitHub to get that similar kind of effect. So yeah, anyway, logistics area over here with our warehouses. These are all functional warehouses. We just don't have businesses in them yet. And I've even gone as far as adding little props on the back of them as well here, among the graffiti and the wear and tear and dirt and all that kind of thing. It's yeah, this took a long time. A very long time. I have also added in a car park as well, and I left this one clean because I thought at some point we need to have some newer modern development. And I did notice actually as well in Vancouver that there was a multi-storey car park right in the middle next to the rail yard. Maybe more appropriate because it's closer to downtown. But even so, I thought it was kind of appropriate to have a mass parking area for all of the workers in this area. So you can see as we go along, I have tried to implement little bits of parking here and there. There are actually car parks here somewhere, but I have used the actual car park assets. So of course the decals are disappearing, whereas domes you'll see here always kind of stay in. So that tends to be why I prefer those, or the parking lot roads indeed as well. So yeah, there's quite a bit of parking integrated within it, but this just gives a one-stop shop for mass parking for the rail yard and for the area. We've then got these two junkyards, I want to say, over here. So we've got some invisible parking in the corner of this one, and this one's much more sort of product-led, I guess. And then we've got a car scrapyard over here. I didn't really show much of this because it's very similar to the scrapyard we did in episode 2 of Philadelphia. I have got the newer cars over in this corner, very much like how I saw on Vancouver as well. So kind of enjoying that aesthetic, and then some machinery to maybe crush the cars or store stuff, not too sure. We then have a couple of offices here, and I'll come back to the office park in a minute. Because around the rail yard, we then have this little area directly inspired from the area we saw on Google Earth from Vancouver, so with lorry storage at the edge over there. Lorries lined up next to our trains. I'm really loving actually the effect of adding the containers onto the empty train carts. I think that kind of looks pretty good because there's not really any train assets at the moment in the game that just simply look like containers being transported. So I thought that worked pretty well. And got this lovely dirty bit up the back. And I mean, just the amount of decals that went into this one tiny little space here was pretty insane, with the dirt layered on top of the stains. And then we've got all the trash decals on top of there as well, then trash props, rubble props to kind of give that effect of stone building up around it. And I've used that in quite a few places here too. But this is another area where hopefully you can kind of see the patchy concrete vibe coming through. Coming onto the rail yard itself, yeah, we obviously have an awful lot of graffiti in and around here. I love the kind of splotch of paint here as well. Just super realistic. Got a ton of decals over the actual rail networks. We've used the net lane rail networks as well to kind of cover up the tracks here too, which give it a much more sort of realistic worn effect. And then we come on to, like, well, this island first, where I've used a lot of the Real Vision decals and one of the Real Vision surfaces actually in here, along with some props. We've got tiny bits of trash dropped in there, some barrels, that sort of thing, some boxes and maintenance areas. Yeah, really like the look of that in the middle of the track. And then we've got Natural Island over here. Again, these Real Vision decals really coming through in terms of the natural surface here. Really love it. And really liking the rock pile up at the edge actually here too. It gives a slightly more natural boundary than just going immediately straight onto grass. Around the train yard, I have added in again some more functional industry just down this end. Very worn down, run down, that sort of thing. A few delivery trucks. Added in a couple of, I forget what the asset is, taxi depot, taxi garages in here, which I just thought kind of looked quite nice at that point. More containers, like I saw on Google Earth down here, with a load of trash decals and that sort of thing. I think it's when you get in really close, actually, that the decals kind of come through a lot more, like all the tiny little cracks that we've added over this space. Really love that. Sully's cracks are amazing. Never thought I'd be saying that. And then coming south first to the cargo rail yard. So really kept this asset as it is and just added a bunch of decals to it. I mean, a lot of decals to really kind of wear and tear it down a little bit, but it's kept a bit smarter because I feel like that probably would be the case with something like this, which is the major logistics hub. Got a tiny bit of industry down this end, again with very much the same detailing as you saw. I actually decided to space these buildings out a bit and give them some yards here with some containers and lorries and rubble piles for full steel grinder over there. And then we have extended out the rail yard, so we've got rid of the fencing, we've added in, oh hello, our bushes have appeared back in magically. There we go, let's get rid of these once and for all. We've got extra container yards down the side here, and then we've got this whole area around the makeshift tram depot. Now this bit isn't functional, sadly. I just didn't want to crowd it with too many industrial buildings, so all of this is just simple prop lorries, ends and prop containers with a lot of the markings, trying to sort of replicate similar things to what we saw in the cargo rail yard. And I think as well the recycling centre has sat in here really nicely actually. It sort of integrates quite well into that cargo area with all of the car parking lines at the back and the lines around where the garbage trucks come in. There's even some containers on the asset already, so I think that's worked pretty nicely. Again, we got another logistics hall down here with the lorries coming in. And also extended the cargo yard down this end using one of the actual cranes from the rail yard. Now, I know it's not on railed tracks, so maybe it's a little bit pointless, but I do think it's kind of a sensible way for them to pick up those containers and load them onto lorries, for example, to take them away from the area. And I also just kind of like how big and tall it looks I think it adds something nice to it there. And then we've got the office park, finally. So I didn't really show any of this because it's very similar to other areas we've done before, and it's not as honestly highly detailed as the industry. We've just got a nice kind of communal area on the side here with car parks and a lot of offices crammed into this space with mixed in car parking around it. And then over here we've got the slightly more fancy office. I couldn't actually find an office building quite like the Vancouver one, so we've just settled for this building here. And I was really reluctant to use any of the signature office buildings because I don't want to suddenly ruin our workforce when we don't have a university in yet, which is something we definitely need to come on to. So yeah, a couple of the larger offices with a bit more space than their own car parks over this side. Also just finished off the police station by wrapping that road around the back, which seemed to make sense with the asset there too. And then the smaller offices over this side around the fire station. And woof, yeah. I think that's pretty much the build, which seemed very quick to review and took an awfully long time to actually build. There's still a ton of stuff to do around this, so you'll see I haven't actually landscaped the river edge here, I haven't landscaped the countryside at the edge, not done anything with this area yet. So we're going to go on to a part 2, I think, for that. We also desperately need to bring public transport over here because there are so many jobs in this area. To give you a final little recce after the build, we've, well, our budget's gone up a lot. I actually did most of it on pause, I'd say, but even so, we're now up to 50,000 an hour. So by adding in cargo rail infrastructure, reducing some of our spend by having a smaller rail yard, and then a whole bunch of additional industry and offices, we've really significantly boosted our budget there. And also, when we come into the population tab, our unemployment is down to 3.5%. So I think that means that we can come in and start a new town next time. So for today, that is going to be it. If you have enjoyed this episode, likes, comments and shares are really greatly appreciated. And keep those suggestions coming. Where do you want to go next in the city? Let me know in the comments below. There are ways to support the channel linked in the description. Huge shout out to all of my YouTube members and patrons. You can of course get this series and early access by signing up to one of those two things. And finishing finally on just a massive shout out to all of you modders and asset makers out there. So much respect for this entire community. But that's all from me for now, so thank you so much for tuning in. I'll catch you again next time. Bye bye.